Call this meeting of the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District Board meeting to order. It's Wednesday, November 11th, and it is 5:07 p.m. Introduction of board members is first. Sean?
You gotta unmute.
Yep, got it. Sean Flynn, Workforce Investment Bureau.
Judd?
Judd Markowski in Bridgeport for the business end of things.
Lorraine?
Lorraine Morris, representing Addison Central School District.
Kim?
Kim Farnan from New Haven, representing the Mount Abe District as a community at large member.
See?
Steve Rooney, representing Mount Abe School District as a board member.
Nick Costin, wherever you are.
Nick from Shoreham, representing ACSD.
Is Missy still on here?
I'm here. Missy Beck, Workforce Investment Board.
Is Mike McGrath?
Yep, Mike McGrath, Addison, representing Addison Northwest.
Thank you. Patrice?
Yes, it's Patrice Alexander, Administrative Assistant at HCC.
A208, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Dana Peterson, Director Superintendent, Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District.
Jay Stetzel, Assistant Director, Hannaford Career Center.
Thank you. Patrice, Christina needs you to let her in.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here? Okay,
Yeah.
So Christina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Christina Macklin, Addison Northwest School District Rep.
Thank you. Kelly?
Kelly Mills, Sustainable Agriculture and Plant Animal Science teacher at the Hannaford Career Center.
Linda?
Linda Barrett, clerk.
Austin?
Sorry about that. Austin Haynes, Business Manager.
Dana?
David Roberts, Adult Coordinator.
Okay, I got
Sorry,
you,
did I
David.
jump in?
That's all right. You're okay. Who else? Lisa?
Lisa Rader, Design and Illustration Teacher and Visual Communications, Middlebury taxpayer.
The only one you're missing is Mike Davies.
And I think, Jake, are you still on or? He left? Yeah, I think Jake left. And then we have a guest, and our guest is Mike Davey, and he's from EEI, and we'll be hearing from him shortly. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Moved. Lorraine.
Second?
Mike.
Mike? I believe that the minutes from October 14th need to be pulled. Is that correct? Folks?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other agenda items that need to be altered? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the agenda with the removal of the minutes of October 14th from the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Motion's passed. Any comments from our visitors? Okay. Thank you all for joining us, and please, hang out as long as you can. We have a packed agenda tonight. Dana, correspondence, a John Deere snowblower.
Can I interrupt for just a second, Suzanne? I have
Yes.
on my screen test student. I don't know if that person has been introduced.
That was Jake Burnham. Did he just come back in? I asked him to introduce himself, but Jake, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still in the car.
Okay,
Sorry.
Okay. That's all right.
thank you.
Dana?
Yes,
Correspondence?
thank you. There are pictures on an email correspondence in the board, the board folder, and it's a donation that was offered to us by a gentleman in the community, and John Curler did an assessment and said that it is a valuable tool that we can use as part of our physical plant maintenance. That may need a little bit of work and upkeep, but John said that it would definitely be worth accepting that donation. I do not have a value on that yet. It was not appraised by John yet. I did give him the task of doing that, but we did not get a chance to figure out the actual cost. But if we do accept this under the action agenda later on, then a notification will be sent to the donor with the approximate value.
Okay, thank you. Since we have pulled the minutes from October 14th, does anybody want to discuss what the question is with the minutes? Or the issue that's with them? Steve or Lorraine, one of the two?
Oh, Steve, why don't you, since you caught it?
Yeah, it just, it appeared as though it might have been the September 9th minutes with the date changed, like somebody was starting to edit it and then got it mixed up or something, because I didn't see any of the syrup loan deferment discussion or the succession plan by the superintendent, which we discussed last month. And so I was confused by it. It didn't seem to match up with the agenda.
Correct, Steve. There are some pieces in there that don't match.
Okay, I printed a copy after I finished and sent it in, and I have everything. So the only thing I can think of is that maybe I sent the wrong one.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought might have happened. Somebody might have prepared it, but then picked the wrong document to send or
Right.
something.
I don't know how the date got changed, but I have it in front of me with all of those items you just mentioned, so.
So,
Am I seeing the wrong thing in the packet, or?
no, I'm seeing the same thing you are, David.
So I guess at this point, we just say we hold them out until the next meeting.
Yeah.
I did want to mention one other thing that I noticed in the minutes that I did get. And that's, it's kind of old business, but in the payroll numbers that were included in that version, you'll notice that the direct deposit and the checking figures are swapped. Like if you look at the first entry, there's roughly $55,000 worth of direct deposit, and then the checks are like $8,000, and then you look at the next pay period and it's been flipped. So it's like we wrote $55,000 worth of checks and very little in direct deposit. I checked the one this month and it's been corrected. That transposition error didn't happen, but it was left over in one of the older versions.
Okay.
I think those could be corrected, right, Linda, with review with the business office to make sure that that is correct. Those were the numbers for the previous one. So something happened in the transposition of the minutes because.
Yeah, it looked like just a simple transposition error. And when I looked at the one, I looked at it this month, it looked fine.
Right. I'm just saying that those minutes were from that report from the consent agenda was the actual amount from last month. Not that would, otherwise it would have been August and we wouldn't have had any. We wouldn't have had any.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. It might have been from the September meeting that came out. I can't remember. So.
Okay. I will look back at the written report that I received and make sure that it's corrected.
All right.
Yeah, and if there was a mistake from the business office, we should probably note the corrected amounts so that we can have that, and just note that that error came from came out of the business office.
Yeah, I've talked to Steve about this independently. The issue is the version I sent out did not include the corrected amount that Gretchen normally gives to Nick. So the numbers are indeed correct. It's just flip-flopped.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Super. Thanks, Austin.
All right, so we will hold
You need a
those
motion to
minutes.
table, Suzanne?
Yes, I'm getting there.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
no, I was gonna say that we were gonna hold them, but I need a motion to table them until next month. May I have a motion to do that, please?
So move, Kim.
Second, Nick.
Moved and seconded to table the minutes, approval of the minutes of October 14th until next month. Nick Nick, you didn't see the bills. Missy,
No.
did you get to see the bills, or does anybody have any questions on the accounts payable for October that were sent out?
I have it from where I printed it out today, but I don't know if you want me to read it. Everybody should have read it.
Everyone should have read it. Does anybody have any questions on them?
Direct deposits look right.
So, Austin, I did have one question on the second page where you have payroll. Is there a reason why there's a second section of lines for payroll that say 11.6? Or was that just copied
I'll
over?
defer to Gretchen on that. I don't know if it's just a placeholder for the template for the document that's created, but Ms. Bailey, do you have any guidance on that?
Hi, it's just for the third payroll of the month. I just keep it there. I haven't changed it. That's all.
Okay.
Sometimes
All
I
right.
treat yeah.
So it's just the placeholder.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yep. You're welcome.
All right. Next on our agenda is a presentation by Mike Davey from EEI. Missy, do you want to introduce Mike and what he's going to be talking about, or do you just want him to jump in cold?
Actually, yes, a little introduction would be wonderful. So as most board members know, but for new board members and other visitors, so for probably over a year, I can't even remember now, the Facilities Committee has been working with Mike and EEI to look at necessary improvements to the Career Center, which include HVAC upgrades, energy efficiency items, and how to better use available space. That effort has been delayed because of COVID, but we thought it was a good opportunity to bring Mike back so that he could present to you the work so far. Keep in mind when you see his presentation that the Facilities Committee hasn't really gone in one direction or another. And the purpose of his presentation is, one, to show you what work has been done so far, and then get feedback from you on what direction we want to go in the future. Nick, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you made the point that it's really to update the board, and we're not looking for any sort of decision process at this time.
Right. Just so you can see what the progress is so far.
Yeah.
So with that, Mike, do you want to take it away?
I do, and I was wondering if I could be made presenter to perhaps share a PowerPoint. If I don't know, in Zoom, does someone have to make me the presenter?
If you have a share screen button, Mike, you should be able to just share your screen.
Okay, I do. And it says host has disabled participant sharing.
You need to make Mike the host in Zoom to make that happen.
Okay, Mike, you're the host.
Okay. So I'll just give a quick, and by the way, so you should be able to see my screen now, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll just give a quick reminder of why we started this process and then jump into the details. So I think I was contacted by the facility director, John, back in January of 2019. So it's been almost getting close to 2 years since we've been this type of process has been thought about, at least at the facility committee level. And it started because I think we had just successfully completed a energy efficiency project at Virgins High School, and that got a lot of press, and that was widely a positive project. And the Hannaford Career Center main campus has a lot of equipment that was installed in the summer of 1970. So the major infrastructure in the building is 50 years old. So we're having a anniversary year for all your ventilation and electrical equipment in the building of 50 years, which means that it's gotten a lot of useful life. The downside is the expected life on that type of equipment is about 35 years. So you've almost got an extra generation out of your HVAC equipment. The EEI was brought in. What we do is we look at the facility and we look for opportunities to save energy, improve the facility, and also help come up with budgets and ways to finance the project over time and look for cost-effective ways to do things. This was a little bit of a challenge on the main campus because the infrastructure is really old. The building hasn't really had a mechanical upgrade since 1970 when it was put in, and then the latest cosmetic major renovation was really in the 80s. So the building really hasn't had a major project since the 80s, almost going on 40 years. There have been some projects, and the maintenance we have to give a ton of credit to John and his staff for maintaining this building as well as it has. But when you have a building in this condition, the question is, how far do you go? Do you deal with cosmetic issues? Do you deal with things like fireproofing, soundproofing, or do you just want to deal with the ventilation and replacing failed equipment? So that's been, I think, the challenge that the facility committee has been wrestling with, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. EEI has been in business since 2007. We're owned by E&E Systems, which has been in business since 1987. Some of the big things that we've noticed during this process, the HVAC system at the main campus is beyond its estimated useful life. What makes that even more challenging is the building was originally constructed with a flat roof, and at some point, I think more than 20 years ago, it was decided to roof over that rubber roof with a metal roof and create a pitched standing seam roof. In doing so, they trapped most of your HVAC equipment below that metal roof. So it's difficult to get at these units because they're in roof penthouses or below sloped roofs, which just means to replace one of these units is not a simple project. It means taking off a metal roof. There's a lot of pneumatic controls and standalone controls, so you do not have a modern digital HVAC control system. The building hasn't had any significant renovation in 30 years, and the electrical systems are broadly 50 years old as well. There are some definite energy saving opportunities by upgrading the older controls, putting in high efficiency gas boilers, and putting in more efficient ventilation systems. One of the things that we looked at is the building envelope. So here you can see this condition where you have the rubber roof, which has been roofed over, and to get to the mechanical units, you have to walk over that rubber roof, which is 50 years old. Maybe, I'm assuming it was 50 years old. I don't know if it was ever replaced, but they went over that with a metal roof. And so that's showing some damage. And we also have disruption in the insulation. So there's a lot of what we call thermal bridges where the metal studs were installed, and we have metal on metal, and there's really not a consistent insulation barrier. Here you can see where the ductwork comes out of the units and then goes up to the roof. Another thing that was noticed is the building facade, or the wood siding around the building is showing some signs of rot. And the entrance to the school was is not incredibly well marked with modern signage. It's a little bit, if you don't know exactly where you're going when you come on campus, it doesn't jump out at you, and it kind of blends in with the rest of the campus. There's not a nice defined entrance. And also the drop off for students, for the preschool kids, they don't really have a defined drop off area. This is right now, I believe that they just basically parallel park, drop their kids off, or they park across and run across the bus lane here. So there's not a great defined area for this preschool program to drop their children off in the morning. So knowing these significant issues, we worked with the facility committee to get a high-level budget to modernize and improve the building. And to do a major renovation of a building of this size, where you strip everything down to the studs, if you will, and do all new finishes, new millwork, new equipment, new kitchen, is somewhere in the $10 to $12 million range. And so we started with that as sort of the ideal case. If you wanted to do everything, get essentially a brand new building, as sort of an ideal scenario. And then we talked about various smaller versions of projects that would still be meaningful. To help us categorize this, we hired Banwell Architects from Quechee, Vermont. They worked with us on meeting with some key staff members, including the superintendent and I think department heads, to understand your programs more, to get some feedback about some of the issues in the building, and to help us prioritize. We also talked a lot about North Campus, where there's basically an underutilized second story that has sufficient room to be a classroom. And if there's a need for that, we talked about the opportunity to redo the stairwell and create access to a second story classroom. We also talked about improving the controls, the electric system, the HVAC system, and trying to improve that main entrance. Here's one of the ideas to improve the main entrance. On this version, we would put the sign further to the left so that when you pull into the campus and take the left, you have a large sign that indicates where your portion of the building is. And then we would put instead of this wood siding that's showing some rot, we would remove that and put in a metal panel. And perhaps you would want to differentiate your portion of the building with a different color facade And so this was just a concept to help us do some pricing, to get some order of magnitude ideas on things that could be done. This is a floor plan of a potential second floor classroom that could be put at North Campus. So we had the architects say, what would it take to make that space usable? And essentially it's redoing a staircase right just to the right of the main entrance. And we could get roughly 1,000 square feet or 1,200 square feet of usable space up there, and which could be a sustainable ag classroom, and still maintain storage and a mechanical room up there. So that was a unique opportunity where there's some space that's not too far away from being usable that right now is very underutilized. What I think happened, and the building I think is 15 years old, so some of you might have been on the board at the time, I'm not sure, but it appears to me that this building was designed to either in the future have this space be fitted out, or it was maybe in the plans originally and then they ran out of money and they had to cut that out. Some of the things that we also noticed at the main campus that could be looked at or maybe should be looked at are the finishes. So although some floors have been upgraded, the green tile on your top right is some asbestos flooring that still exists throughout the school. On your left is some cracking on a panel where your grease trap is located in your kitchen. So the code would require, if you do significant upgrades in the kitchen, you would really want your grease trap exterior to the building and not interior to the building. So this product was installed original to the school in the 70s, and you really, for service and for cleanliness, it's really better to put this product outside and may be code required, so that your grease interceptor can be removed from the outside of the building. And then the bottom right is some wire glass that you have inside the school that is no longer allowed by code. So that's something that that could be incorporated into the project if we wanted to get into the finishes. The lighting throughout the school is fluorescent, so there's an awesome opportunity to go to LED, get some savings and some better light. What you'll see to the right is kind of a condition up on the second floor. I think this, I don't know what space this is. I think it's in the nursing space. What's that?
Medical professions.
Medical professions, sorry, that's a better word for it. So what you see here is the ceiling goes over the drywall. So that happens in a number of spaces in the school. And this product is called an acoustic ceiling. What it's trying to do is reduce noise transfer. And when you build it in this way, where the ceiling goes right over the wall, you lose that ability. And so these classrooms where it was built in this way tend to be extremely noisy. You'll also see some staining on the tiles and the tan color of the grid. So it's not that it's falling down, but it's just it looks dated, if you will, and it looks like it's served a good, useful life. The millwork is something that we also talked about. Again, I don't know the date of the millwork, but it appears that a lot of the cabinets are original to the construction. This is a picture where you just see that it's missing some doors, and just, has that blue paint, which just looks a bit dated. And you see that there's a bathroom to the left that's really being used as a storage area. So there's perhaps a need for more better storage in the classrooms. This is what the lighting products would look like. This is if the room that Dana's in has 3 32-watt bulbs, that means that your average fixture at the school is using somewhere around 80 or 90 watts. The 2x4 fixture at the bottom that can replace those uses 22 watts. So there's a huge opportunity to reduce your electric consumption through lighting. So with all these potential ideas, we worked with the facilities committee to try and see what might be plausible. And I will say one of the things that came up many times is trying to balance what we would like versus a concern about what the cost per pupil is and what doing a large project might mean to that equation. I will tell you, we are in the process right now of doing a bond vote for Springfield School District in Vermont. They're in a similar era high school, and we are going to the voters asking for $10.4 million on December 8th. And what's being used to help justify it is why do it now is the bond costs from Vermont Bond Bank are at the lowest that we've ever seen them. So right now you can borrow $10 million for 2.24%. So comparatively in 2008, the last time Springfield did a bond, when they did their elementary schools, the bond rate was 4.25. So that savings on a large project like this equates to $200,000 a year in savings for looking at 10 million now versus then. So they're going out to their taxpayers saying, doing this $10 million project will only equate to, I think $18 for the average home in Springfield per year, and they'll get a modern ventilation system that meets the current ASHRAE standards, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the process that we're going through. So we can jump through this in a little bit more detail, but I'll tell you what we worked with for the facilities board is that the $12 million project, which would be maybe everything you would want and need, we scaled down to say, okay, what would be a significant project that we could do for less? And so what an $8 million project would get you would be a significant amount of asbestos abated, a lot of new flooring, LED lights throughout the building, all new millwork, which is the cabinets in the classroom and the storage, a new pavement, and the pavement outside the back of the building is in really rough shape, and a new drop-off area. I will say that the pavement is technically owned by, my understanding, by the school district and not your, not Hannaford Career. So this is an item that you may not want to do, but may want to negotiate at some future lease agreement that pavement should be fixed, even if it's not part of one of your bond votes. Door hardware, so replacing all the old doors, the wire glass, making all the doors ADA compliant, replacing all the ceilings and soundproofing would be about $400,000. Improving the attic insulation, $125,000. Redoing the greenhouse glass, somewhere in the $200,000 range. A new metal soffit around the perimeter was in the $600,000. The HVAC was just under $2 million. New high efficiency boilers, new controls, a solar system on the metal roof, a new electric and fire alarm system with new transformers, and an addition to the North Campus to provide access to that second-story classroom and LED lighting. So a project like this would be somewhere in the $8 million range, depending on what was finally in and out. And then we thought that that would be nice, but if that is beyond what reach, we wanted to have a, I went through the pros and cons of this. Sorry, I'll just do that quickly. All right, the pros of doing a comprehensive project like this, that bond costs are at all-time lows. So if you do this project in the near future, you'll probably never be able to borrow the money cheaper. It would modernize the school, take care of many long-term needs, and bring everything up to current codes, and modernize your interior and exterior space. We estimated that the bond payment would be an add of about $540,000 per year for a project like this to the budget. It would increase your cost per student, obviously, depending on how many students that is. And the pavement and building exterior, that you may be able to have Middlebury High School pay for all or a portion of that cost at some future date. So that would be the con of including that in this project. So then we wanted to have a more scaled down approach as well, which was an option B. This would be a project under $5 million. It would include asbestos abatement only where it is absolutely required for the new ventilation system. It would include new lights. It would include new doors and ADA hardware. We would only do, rather than replacing all the ceilings, we would just replace the ceilings where they need to come down for the new ductwork. We would do a more limited reentry project, a smaller area of the soffit, just replacing it where it's really, falling down, and work on the main entrance. The HVAC and controls and fire alarm and transformer would be essentially the same between A and B. We would rather, under this more scaled down approach, we would just do a limited installation of air sealing and not provide a blown in cellulose or spray foam in that attic area. We would only provide painting in the areas that we're disturbing, and then take care of some smaller things like that we noticed that were significant code issues, like the guardrails not being at the right height, and try and create at least 3 parking spaces for the preschool parents to drop their kids off. And we kept the North Campus addition and LED retrofit as an option. And so something like this would be in the $4.9 million range. The pros of this, it replaces all your HVAC, it replaces all your end-of-life equipment, modernize the HVAC system, provide that additional classroom at North Campus, modern controls and lighting, and $45,000 in energy savings. The cons are no significant cosmetic improvements. The building facade, pavement, greenhouses are not really touched, but the budget impact goes down to somewhere around $280,000 per year. And the difference between A and B, B does not include the following items. So the siding improvements, A does not include the following items. Major siding improvements, the asbestos abatement, the new millwork, the solar, the pavement, and the insulation.
So Mike, just to correct you, those are in A, they are not in B.
Right. Yeah, I wrote that in a confusing way, but I think the way it's written is correct, but it just said option B does not include the items that were on option A, so it was a little bit cross, but yes, that's correct. So what I think the normal, so in a non-COVID year, what would normally happen for a process like this is, and I think the path we were on before COVID hit, is the facilities committee would bring forward an option A and B. We would meet with the business manager to fully vet out the budget impacts of either one. And then the board would decide whether to bring forward A for a bond vote, or B, or neither, or something in between. And originally, the original path for this plan was that it would be voted on by if the board decided to bring it forward, we would have done it in the spring with a potential bond vote of November of 2020, which we've obviously, because of COVID, sailed past that time frame. So the board does definitely not need to decide between A or B, or maybe a C or an A plus. We're not looking for that decision. I think what we are looking for in the near future is a new timeline, and that timeline might be something like bringing. It could be, hey, we don't like this idea, let's just scrap it, and we've done our work, and the committee can retire. Or what we could say is, we like a lot of what's in here. We want to talk about it more, and a reasonable timeline might be, let's say March of 2022. I'm trying to be careful, or maybe November of 2021, or so I think because of COVID, we just need to reset the timeline of when and if we want to bring something like this to the voters. Any questions, or I know that's a lot of information and kind of quickly, but any questions at this time?
Mike, did you want to say something about the different finance options before you conclude your comments?
Yeah. So there's basically two major ways that projects like this are financed. The first is with a bond. That's more typical in Vermont. The rates tend to be lower. However, the downside of a bond is they're front loaded. I can give you an example. I just saw a bond schedule, and I think it was for a $10 million bond. The first year payment is 800 some odd thousand, and then the year 20 payment is 600,000. So what they do with the Vermont Bond Bank when you go through their process is they recalculate the interest each year based on how much principal is remaining. So your first full year, in the case of that project, is 200,000 higher than your last year. It's nice for the last years, but it makes it more painful for the first couple of years. So there's been a couple things that we've done. One is you can do it with a lease instead, with municipal leasing consultants out of Grand Isle, Vermont. We work with them. What they do is they level the payments. So and the budgets that the amounts that I've shown here are with levelized payments. So your payments, it would be very similar to a mortgage. You'd have a flat payment of, let's say, 300,000 a year, and that's what it would be for 20 years. You do pay a little bit more in interest with that approach, but it makes your first and second year much less painful than the bond does. The other thing that we've done before is, and Addison, this is what Addison Northwest did. They had a bond that was expiring, so they decided to do interest only for the first couple of years because they knew the high school bond would be paid off in 2 years. And so for the first 2 years of our energy project, they paid interest only, I believe. And then, so if you had a scenario like that, like a bond that was going to expire in 3 years, we could, and we don't want to have the full pain of the bond. There are ways to do interest only for a year or two, until that pain point is gone. So I don't know if there are any bonds in this district expiring in the near future, but that's worth at least thinking about.
So Mike, to your question, there is a bond that's retiring, I believe, in 2 years. So I think it's right in around 2022. I'll defer to Austin if he has the numbers off the top of his head, but that bond is due to be retired. That was a 15-year bond, and it was for the construction of North Campus. So we're closely approaching that time frame. So there will be approximately $110,000 in debt that will be retired with that bond. So in terms of the calculations, when we get to this point, when we're talking about it, we would be able to reduce the total, not the total cost, but reduce the impact on the expense side of the budget by that retired bond. So we would not be taking that full amount and adding it to our expense side of the budget moving forward.
And I will say, we've had very good success with getting these projects passed by the voters. So we've done a project with Addison Northwest that was I believe 7 million, and that passed with overwhelming support. We had a project in Mill River passed with near unanimous support a couple of years ago. And Bennington, Vermont as well, their school district passed this. So my overall opinion is when the board has gotten behind these projects and feel that they're necessary, I've seen them pass in Vermont fairly easily.
Question. So on your North Campus rendition, I only see staircases. And so then you are not in compliance with ADA regulations because there's no way for anybody that's handicapped to get to that second floor.
So my architect is not on, and I wish I had with this question. There is an exception, and this the size of this second floor addition is compliant with the code. I could get the specific details of that back to you, but we specifically looked at that, and there, with this size room in this school, it's small enough that it's essentially allowed to be built this way. I can get you the details from the architect.
Yeah, I'd be interested because if you had anybody, I mean, I've spent a lot of time recently on crutches, and doing stairs on crutches is by no means fun.
Yep.
So I would hate to block a student's access to a classroom because they're on crutches or they're in a wheelchair because we only put in stairs.
Yes.
Just for your information, John and I asked that question at least a half dozen times. And Mike is right. The architects came back and cited the actual specific code that was allowing it because neither John and I believed that we could do any type of renovation without some type of a lift mechanism. And we explored at least 2 or 3 different methods for doing that. And then the architects came back and said, you're actually, if you choose to do this at the cheapest way possible, you will not have to put in a lift mechanism.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it couldn't be added. Depending on what type of system, an elevator may cost anywhere between 60 to 100,000, depending on what it was and what was required. So it was something that was in the budget, and then we found. I will tell you, I normally can cite the code off the top of my head, but this project, because it's kind of dragged on for two years and we delayed it a little bit, I lost the specific section, but I can get you that answer.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
The price that you're giving us now, if they decide like in 2 years, is the price going to go higher or lower?
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is that that construction costs escalate about 3.7% a year. So if you were to say we don't want to do this, we want to put this in the budget in 2 years or 3 years, what I would say is to escalate it about 4% per year. I will tell you right now, if you try and buy like specific items like 2x4s have gone up about 70% from last year. And there's a lot, this year has had a significant amount of escalation. But what we typically say is construction costs escalate between 3 and 5% per year.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members? Missy, what did you want? Did you just want the presentation? Did you want direction from the board?
Nick, can you help me remember? I think we just wanted to present it so that so the board could consider what's presented, knowing that it's a lot of information. But we will need some direction in the near future on how to proceed.
But the presentation that you have, Mike, can that be shared to Dana so that it can be sent out to board members so that they can reread it and possibly think of some questions for next month?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'm happy to come back as well. I know this is, like I think Nick said, we weren't expecting yes, let's do option A, let's vote on it next month. It was more just to give you an update on where we're at.
So if we have no further questions from board members and no other questions for Mike, then I would propose that we continue along with our action agenda.
Suzanne, can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, and I know this might be a pipe dream, but is there going to be any grant money related to HVAC systems and COVID available down the road or in the near future that would help us with this project if we did it sooner or later, or just wondering? Okay.
So with the first round of stimulus, there was, with the PPP program, there was a little bit of stimulus money that went out for school HVAC projects. The state of Vermont knows that many of its buildings are not in compliance, and in fact, your building, although it's 1970, is not the worst in Vermont. There are some buildings that have zero ventilation in schools. So there's definitely a known, if a second stimulus project process came out, it would not, I think it's possible that there would be some funding for ventilation. The problem with the way it came out this year is it basically came out in September, and all of the ventilation projects that are needed at this school are so significant because they're underneath the metal roof that it was really hard to imagine taking the roof off in October to try and get some grant money, even if you could. And so that's what the problem was. And all that first round of federal money had to be spent by the end of the year. So we're scrambling right now doing a project at Addison Central School, adding some ventilation up there.
There must be some grants for the solar, I'm assuming, right?
Those come and go. Under the Obama administration, there was all kinds of solar money. There is not a ton right now. The nice thing about solar is it essentially pays for itself. So if you do solar, it's essentially budget neutral, meaning that the solar panels, if you finance it over 20 years, they'll pay for themselves in 20 years. So that wouldn't be a huge factor on the tax rate, but obviously if you got a grant, that would help even more.
Last call for questions. Thank you, Mike. We will get back to you and let you with more questions, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Austin, policy 2.6, asset protection.
Okay, so this was a policy that was reviewed about this time last year, and the policy, the 2-pager that I sent out, has an enclosed or referenced certificate of coverage that's included in the board materials. So I won't go through every single line, but I'll just highlight the main components and then field any questions if you have any. I guess the main bucket to look at is just our general liability exposure. And again, the COI that's attached details the different areas of coverage and what the limitations are. The policy outlines generally what our conflict of interest policies are, or just details about obtaining competitive bids and quotes for certain thresholds. So anything over $15,000 automatically triggers an RFP or an RFQ. And then we have an internal policy for anything over $5,000 requires competitive quotes. Number 7 in particular outlines our purchase order process and the approval process that we do internally, both with the administrative team here and the board members. And at the end, it outlines what our accounts payable invoicing procedure is, and then the involvement with the school treasurer as it pertains to payroll. Towards the end, it gets into a little bit about the audit, and at the moment, there is no conflict of interest with the board's involvement in the audit. And the last piece touches slightly on community involvement and engagement. So that's generally the policy itself. There's a few other pieces here and there, but that's kind of a quick snapshot. I guess, does anyone have any questions on policy 2.6?
Austin, Nick.
Yes, sir.
On point 2, the unbounded personnel, it refers to a certificate of coverage, but I didn't see the bonding covered in that certificate.
Oh, I see.
I think we went through this last year on bonding, and I think finally Dana came up with a solution, but
It's included in there. We went back and forth, and where is it? School leaders' errors and omissions, I believe, is what they are calling them.
Oh, is that it?
I believe so.
I know we went through it last year as well.
You're right, and when we went back to Visbit, they told us that was our coverage. We were looking for a special certificate, but my understanding, if I'm not mistaken, is that that's
Okay,
how
yeah.
it's good.
Okay, good.
Thanks for the question.
Nick, if you want me to get something in writing, I'm happy to reach out to Visbit and have them point to the exact language for that.
It might be helpful to have, useful for you to have it in writing somewhere.
Okay.
That would allow us to be able to not go through the same question each year and to have it attached to the assets monitoring report.
Yeah, and I think it's allow unbonded.
I had the same question, Nick, but I couldn't find that in the literature, so I left it. I thought it was a typo in the original executive limitations.
What was it?
Policy. I don't know.
Good.
So yeah, but that's worth looking into. If you want, Austin can ask Visbit how that should be characterized. Because just because our policy has a typo doesn't mean we have to move that forward.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to accept policy 2.6 asset protection, please?
So moved, Nick.
Been moved by Nick, seconded by
Sean.
Sean. Been moved and seconded to accept policy 2.6 asset protection. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of policy 2.6 asset protection, please signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's passed. We have in your board packet, you have information on Karen Benhauer. She unfortunately has a family emergency. Her father is at the hospital tonight, so she was not able to be here. She has been approved through the Addison County Workforce Alliance as their newest representative to our board. I would like a motion to accept their recommendation so that she can join the board.
This is Kim, so moved.
It's been moved by Kim. I need a second, please.
Seconded, Sean.
Been moved and seconded by Kim and Sean to approve the new WIB member, Karen Beinhauer, who represents Addison County Workforce Alliance. Is there any further conversation or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion's passed. Dana, professional staff hiring.
Yes, we have a construction technology nominee, Nick Cantrick. His resume was included in your packet. If you need a moment to access that, feel free to do so. Nick is currently a paraeducator working at which one is it? It's the Bingham
Cornwall.
Elementary, huh?
Cornwall.
Yep, Bingham Elementary. Is that correct, Linda? Did I get that right? Where did Linda go?
She's muted.
He's working at the Cornwall Elementary School.
Yeah, I think they prefer to have it called Bingham, but I'm just checking with Linda to see if I got that right. 'Cause I made a mistake.
It is Bingham, but they don't care which way you call it.
Oh, okay, so, well, either way. So that's where Nick is currently working, and he got rave reviews on his references. He did a demonstration lesson. We got good feedback from all of the students who participated. We had a student on the screening committee, and he gave him very high marks. So it is the unanimous recommendation to bring Nick Cantrick forward for your consideration as a professional hire and an interim instructor for the rest of the year. So we're looking to do a full search, and Nick is well aware of that. But based on his performance, we think he might turn out to be a very strong candidate for that continuing position. So at this point, we're just looking for a long-term substitute, and he is willing to take on that task.
So Dana, being a long-term substitute, is he in the position to be long-term in a career center and doing the endorsements, or does he not have to do the endorsements for a long-term sub?
No, he does, and pending the decision of the board this evening, I will make the appropriate application to AOE to begin that process. But I've already done my homework on that, and there is, he would be eligible for licensure in the particular program, and that would certainly give him a leg up as we begin the process for a full-time instructor. So that is a requirement. We cannot have anybody teaching a career center that does not have some type of provisional or apprenticeship license.
Can I have a motion to accept or to hire Nick Cantrick for construction technology as a long-term sub for the rest of the school year?
Judd, so moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Judd, and then Kim, I think. Been moved and seconded to hire Nick Cantrick for construction technology as a long-term sub for the rest of the school year. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's passed. Dana, you also had a medical professions candidate on here.
That was not was supposed to be on it. That was just part of the notes of what we might have, and that should not have made its way onto the agenda for this evening, because we do not have a candidate.
All right, thank you.
We do have the program covered, but we do not have a long-term sub identified. We currently have an arrangement with a number of people who are covering the various components to make sure that all students can earn their dual enrollment credits and their IRCs. And we're working on a solution for the rest of the year. But we have someone who is lined up for the next 30 days that would be able to cover that until we have a formal nominee to bring to the board.
Next is we have to approve the donation of the John Deere snow blower. Can I have a motion to do so?
So moved, Kim?
Been moved by Kim. Who said second?
Sean.
Sean. Been moved by Kim, seconded by Sean to accept the donation of the John Deere snow blower. Is there any further conversation? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's passed. Natural Resource Management Program request to defer the loan payment.
That was a carryover that was tabled from last meeting, Suzanne, and people wanted more time to read over the materials that were presented last time and to discuss that in greater detail.
So what are people's thoughts? If you feel you still need more time, I'm not sure if there's a a necessary need to make a decision tonight. If you want to have more time to discuss it and think about it. Steve, you started to say something?
Yeah, I just think there was one question about whether they were actually looking for a deferral or a forgiveness. Did they ever clear that up?
This is Judd here. If I remember right, they were asking for either or both. They would prefer a deferral, but forgiveness, but I think that they were talking about deferral too, and I think they were leaving that up to us. Does anybody else remember?
I think that is accurate, Judd. That's my recollection.
That's what I remember too, Judd. Suzanne, could I say something?
Lorraine, yes.
I'm not sure I necessarily think I need more time. I would be okay with deferring it. I'm not sure I would be in favor of forgiving it.
I agree with that. I think the deferral is fair, and it threads the needle between learning life lessons and being a community member.
Yes, I agree.
I agree too.
So do I.
I agree.
So I need a motion from the board, please.
I would make a motion that we defer the loan for this coming year and add it on to the loan amount. Wasn't phrased very well, but
I second that, Judd.
So it's been moved and seconded to defer the loan payment that was due for this year to next year from the Natural Resource Management Program. Is there any further conversation? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Missy had her hand up, sorry.
Oh, yes, I was confused. Are they deferring it to next year, which would make their payments double, or deferring it another year to the end of loan?
deferring it to the end. It's just adding an extra year onto the loan.
That's what I heard Lorraine say. So, Linda, what do you have in the minutes?
That's what I had, was deferred. It would be added to the end of the loan.
Okay. Is there any other questions, comments? Okay, so we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passed. Policies, we have 6 policies here. They've all been presented at various times.
Suzanne, clarification, the policies have been presented to the Budget and Policy Committee, but this is the first time that anybody from the full board has seen these policies, and this is the first reading, so this is only for warning.
Yes.
Not for action.
Yes. And I just would add that as I think Dana put somewhere in the thing that you can look up, you know, he's given us the new ones with highlighted things. The responsible computer has quite a bit of changes on it, as does the class size policy, which those are significant changes from the VSBA. The other four are really have very little changes, and the electronic communication between employees and students, that cannot be, that has to be the way it is. The ACSD has already looked at this. There was some concerns about one section of it. There was some research done back and forth with the AOE, I think. I'm not sure exactly where, but it was told to us that that has to be just the way that it is. So there are no changes that we could do even if we wanted to. So yeah, this is the first go around with these, and you're welcome to, you know, to go back to the originals and check. Dana's done a great job of highlighting information, and that's.
You can access all of the original policies through the link on the policy, the budget and policy minutes. We have that link every month, so you can go and check that folder and look at all the policies if you choose to compare.
Yeah.
But the highlights will give you an idea of what has changed.
Does anybody have any questions about any of the changes?
Judd has his hand up.
Judd?
Sure, I had just one comment. Implementation number 1, the superintendent or his or her designee. In the modern age, can we just change that to their?
Where are you?
Yeah, which one?
Class size policy. Second paragraph, so implementation number 1. And it's just a grammar thing, the superintendent or his or her designee, and I think we can change his or her to just their.
Isn't there a reference to a plural?
Yes, there's only one designee.
Speaking grammatically.
But I think that it's proper grammar for the current environment of
Right.
gender neutral stuff.
Correct. We're changing pronouns a lot of times to their rather than his or her.
Yeah, and it can now represent a singular or a plural pronoun.
Correct, and it always that hasn't changed. I mean,
right. We're just recognizing it more now.
Correct. That I agree with. Anyway,
you could also omit the possessive adjective and use or appropriate designate.
Sure. That might be an additional thing. Yep. That was the only thing that I saw in that one.
Once again, this is only for a first reading. You'll have another opportunity to look at that. I will make sure that Patrice can make that change on our policy, and we'll highlight that for next time. We will take the highlights, the yellow highlights out probably, and just highlight anything that you want changed on the next version. You can always go back and reference these. They're in PDF form in the packet. So
Are there any other comments for tonight?
Nick? A question for Dana, I guess. The class size policy numbers, where are they coming from, and do they have any impact on the budgeting process?
Where they're coming from is based on the policy and the requirements for districts to adopt them. There's a reference to a maximum, a minimum, and an optimum.
Yep.
The maximum is set to a large extent by industry standards and requirements. So any place that you see 16, that is a max based on what we can allow within those programs per Department of Labor standards.
Okay.
20 is more of a space and program integrity cap, and the opportunity to have groups be even numbers so that they can be mixed into pods or quads or dyads, however you want to do it. The minimum number is a number that we looked at to say where is our breakpoint, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in our presentation, and next month we'll have more information for you.
Yeah.
But we wanted to pick a number that was realistic, yet it wasn't too draconian and too unattainable. So we decided that we had Jay and I and a couple of other folks had a conversation about what was a realistic number to put in there, and we believed that 50% capacity was a place to start. And so we chose the minimum capacity at half of what the maximum capacity. And where did the optimum number come from? We picked the middle of the range. In other words, that was one that would allow for the greatest opportunity for student learning, the balance with teacher demands and ability to provide quality opportunities, and yet still leave some capacity for growth should other students want to join the class. So there were a number of factors that went into the optimum.
Okay.
And we feel that those are reasonable numbers. Once again, these numbers are not in policy. These are recommendations under normal operating circumstances, and they represent a set of guidelines that the school leadership, administration, and business office would use for determining budget implications, as Nick has alluded to, and how they all would interact. Generally speaking, and addressing that, even though I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, the minimum number is being offered right now and proposed as a number that would allow the program to break even in terms of cost to run.
Okay.
So this is Suzanne. So a lot of these programs, though, have a 1 and a 2 year program, and all of those numbers are rolled into.
So there are section guidelines, Suzanne, and we have a little bit of work that we still need to do on this. But those are basically they're section guidelines. But I'll take an example. ART has 2 sections. It's right up at the top. The max that we can have in the technical component, because of the heavy lab component in terms of construction and the tools they would be working with, is 16, whereas the performance could be 20. It could actually potentially go above that, but at this point, we're leaving that maximum at 20. And so it would, each program would have to, you would either have to have 10 as a minimum in ART performance and 8 in technical, but we can look at the program in terms of the total FTEs, and you could combine those and take an average. So we're not looking at canceling a particular section just because those numbers aren't where we would like them to be. We take it, we're looking at it as a potential aggregate, so that you would take 8 and 10, that's 18. If we had 18 students in ART, they would be able to cover costs. These are just projections at this point in time. And anything above that would be contributing to more than covering program costs. So if you only had 6 students in technical, but you had 14 students in performance, you would have a total of 20, which would be above that, that minimum.
Right. The only reason I made that comment was because, like in automotive, there's 1 and 2. So that you have some first year students and second year students, and I just wanted the board to realize that all of those students, whether you're first year or second year, are rolled into one line. There's
So let me correct that, Suzanne. Because they're not split out as different, any section of automotive technology would follow those numbers. So it doesn't matter whether it was auto 101 or auto 103. It would be, we would apply the same standard to those. It's only because performance and technical are different beasts completely. There's another place where that also occurs. If you look down under medical professions 1 and medical professions 2, our number for medical professions 2 has to be, is more restricted based on access to healthcare facilities and supervision. We cannot go beyond 12 because we don't have the capacity to supervise more than 6 per person. So that number would have to stay at 12. Whereas the first year medical professions could be as high as 16.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So any other questions on the policies for tonight?
Remember, you could ask more questions next time as well.
Right.
This is just so that they are warned for 30 days.
So since they are on the action agenda for a warning, can I have a motion to warn them for the next meeting?
And you're asking to warn all 6, Suzanne, all at once, right? All 6 policies?
Yes, all 6 at once.
Yes, I would do that.
Steve
So-
moved.
Yes, Steve?
Yes.
So Steve moved it, Lorraine seconded to forward all 6 policies for warning for next meeting. Is there any further discussion on them? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passed. We're into the informational agenda. Dana, preliminary budget.
Sure, I'm gonna try and share my screen. So bear with me for just a moment. I need Patrice to at least make me a co-presenter or something so that I can share my screen. It's not quite allowed yet.
There you go, Dana.
Great, thank you, Patrice.
Sorry.
Oops, what happened here? There we go. Oops. Ah! Okay. The presentation that you're about to see is a modified presentation of what I have already shared with 2 of our district partners, and there are a few other comments that I will make later in the presentation, but I wanted you to see to a large extent what I have already shared with some of our partners and with the, I think, Budget and Policy Committee, at least members of the Budget and Policy Committee are familiar. So good evening. For those of you who aren't aware, this is my 4th year here as the director and superintendent. And for those who are listening via MCTV, my name is Dana Peterson and I am the director superintendent of the Career Center. So just a few highlights from the school year so far. Some of you may already know this, but I thought that I would go through some of them anyway. We are in person 4 days a week. We do remote access on Wednesdays. More than 80%, close I think to 85% of our students are in 4 days a week if they're in technical programming. The others for the pre-tech, they're in as many as 2 days a week. For those who are coming on their non-cohort days, and we have a number of those who are doing so. We have a small number of students who are remote, and those needs are being addressed either in real time during the class session or with other remote access options. We're working to serve all of our students from our partner schools all over Addison County and actually beyond. We have a couple from beyond Addison County, several who are coming from Rutland County, and I think at least one from Chittenden County. The student organizations have been starting up, and some of them are actually gathering through remote meetings. And the students have been very cooperative and very collaborative. And they have responded very well to recommendations about how to keep themselves and others safe and how to comply so that we can continue to maintain our programming at a level that meets their needs for in-person instruction. And the students have also been very engaged and appreciative of the time to be applying themselves. And I can't tell you the number of times that people have just said very kind things, seeing us and not giving us a hard time with our questions, which we have to address every day. And particularly when we ask them if they've been traveling out of state, they are very, very responsive. And I am very pleased with their energy and enthusiasm. Here's a little bit of an overview of the budget, and this is very, very preliminary. Our total expense budget for this current year, FY21, is $3,864,751. And the preliminary expense budget for FY22 is $3,789,751. We rounded off. That's a change of approximately about $75,000. We think that that's a good start at this point. With respect to revenues, they are not projected at this time, so it's going to be very difficult. We should have those projections by the next board meeting in December. We have to get confirmation from AOE on a variety of things, including our revenue allocations, as well as FTE confirmation. And so we're assuming in that presentation that I just gave, we're assuming similar revenue projections for next year. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to just do a brief tutorial on how our estimated tuition assessments are generated. So if we're maintaining revenues the same as last year, then once we deduct our revenues from the expenses, the difference is the amount to be raised for tuition from our member towns throughout the county and outside. And all tuition costs are assessed on a 6-semester trailing average. And that means we take the last 3 years, not this current year. Well, for this year in FY21, we build our partners based on last fall, so October of 2019, and 5 semesters back. So they're paying us now for students that are not in the building. Just have to put that out there because it's a little difficult sometimes to wrap your mind around. So the amount to be raised by taxes, assuming that everything is fairly similar, would be $1,874,848. We divide by the 6-semester average, which currently stands at 129.12, needs to be verified by AOE. And that gives us a tuition number of $14,520. That compares to $16,000 and some change last year. In addition, in order to be transparent, we have to also account for the state payment of approximately $1,137,000, and that's a $9,189 payment on behalf of the state. When you add that together to the $14,520, you get a tuition rate, an overall tuition rate of $23,709. That is compared to the FY21 tuition rate of $25,503, and that is down $1,800 as you can do the math, nearly $2,000. Did we cut $2,000 out of the budget per student? No. Our FTE count has risen, and that is what drives a lot of our tuition rates. For the last 3 years since I had come to the Career Center, our FTE rate, even though some of our current numbers were going up, our FTE rate was dropping because we had a couple of semesters prior to my arrival that were extremely low. We'll talk about that in another slide. The good news is that we are down approximately $1,800, both on the tuition rate that would be charged our partner schools and our overall announced tuition rate to be able to be compared statewide. Maybe we'll go on. Oh, there we go. So the 6 semester average. In the past 7 years, semester averages have fluctuated between 123 and 135. 129.12 is right in the middle of that range right now, slightly higher than the actual middle. In the fall of 2015, student FTEs hit a high of 153. That was on just the semester average, so it's not to be confused with our 6 semester average of 123 to 135. So we had a high on one single semester, not 6 overall, at 153. Last year we had 147 FTEs in the fall of 2019, and we had 140 in the spring. Those were very good numbers, and we hadn't seen them in almost a decade, with the exception of that the 2015 mark of 153, and we were very close to that. Our current FTE semester count, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is 126.49. In August, we had 140 FTEs, and as I have mentioned in a previous report, those FTEs declined as a result of a number of students not being able to, as a result of the change in schedule, not being able to access Career Center programming. In the spring of 2017, we had our lowest in the last 7 years of 111 FTEs. And we hung on to that for 3 years. So that low number pulled our overall average down considerably. That has now rolled off, and we have seen a jump of approximately 5 or 6 FTEs, 6 semester average FTEs from last year. What I've thrown on here is I've given projected partner schools the 6 semester FTE averages for FY22. And these also are subject to verification with AOE, but I have provided MUHS or ACSD and MAUSD with the numbers that you see here. So 4797 is MUHS, 4016 is VUHS, and 3407 is MAUSD. And I've told them, I have a Virgin's presentation coming up next Monday, and that will complete all 3 of our preliminary budget presentations. And we made a concerted effort last year to get as much information out as early as possible so that they would have a relatively reliable placeholder for their calculated costs. So what I've told them is that they can take their approximate FTE, multiply it by the tuition rate that we're projecting. It's still subject to verification and finalizing, and numbers that we get from AOE, but at 14,520. And that should give them a pretty good, pretty accurate assessment of what their costs will be for next year. Because remember, that assessment is based on past years, so they won't be paying for students next year. Right, because they won't be here. So that will be all students counted up through the fall of 2021. No, 2020. Program enrollment highlights. I presented those numbers last month, that we were serving 349 students. The total FTE count, once again, is 126.81. Most programs are at the minimum number of students based on our proposed class size table. There are a couple of exceptions, and that's Diesel 1 and Human Services Foundations. They have very small numbers, and some of those are actually seniors. So there's a difference because the foundations can be taken at any time, so that number could change. The Diesel 1 program is a sequential program, and we have a very small number, and that is not, it's looking like that would probably be a combined class of diesel program for next year, because we don't have students that would be coming into Diesel 2 not having done Diesel 1. In my time here, we've had one student that actually qualified for a second level diesel program because they had experience working with diesel mechanics previously and had done the auto tech program. But we're not looking like having an influx of a half dozen students to make that a viable option for next year. Whereas human services, depending on what they sign up for, they can take that in any order. Additional program highlights, we are working on cost per program calculations. We have some preliminary numbers, but Austin and I need to do, and perhaps Jay as well, need to do some validation to make sure that all of those are accurate. But we have been working on that since the last board meeting. It had to be put on hold a little bit because the auditors have been here for the last couple of days. And in the last week and a half, Austin and Gretchen in the business office have been up to their necks, I'll say. Austin says knee deep, I'd probably say neck deep, in responding to the auditors to get them all of the information that they need for our FY 20 closeout audit. And that will be continuing for the rest of this week. Although the auditors have been on site for the first couple of days, they are not going to be on site unless they need to come back for something specific. They can deal with that. So remotely. So we will have those in a handout and a presentation for you to consider. The other thing that we're working on is a break-even point for program costs. I've alluded to that with respect to the class size policy, and we will be validating that through our mathematical calculations on the division of contribution to the overall budget and the distribution of students per program. Adjustments to programs will be considered this year and based on viability for next year. For example, if we have a class with very few juniors that could not form a viable cohort, we will combine level 1 and level 2. That's similar to models that already exist in sustainable ag and in design and fabrication. So Kelly Mills in sustainable ag runs a 2-year curriculum, and students can take it as juniors or as seniors, and then it rotates to the following year so that you can always have a viable cohort that are working on a specific aspect of the curriculum. Doug Atwood does the same thing in design, in industrial design and fabrication. That provides us one option that we can employ if there is a shortage for a year or two while a cohort gets built back up. Once we have a cohort of first-year program students who would be eligible to return for the second year, then we can certainly make an adjustment. That was a question that was asked in terms of our focus for program enrollments. Student enrollment stabilization. We're working with our partners on a common schedule that won't change. It would have been great to have 3 consecutive semesters of 140 or more student FTEs. That would do wonders for reducing our overall cost on a 3-year rolling average. But 126 and change is not bad, given the fact that we're in a COVID year. We did have that common schedule last year, and our FTEs, student FTEs increased significantly. So we're hoping to be able to return to that, to provide a number in each program between our optimum and our maximum capacity. This last year, we had several programs that were at full capacity, which was really great to see. This year, I'm not sure that we're running at full capacity. Do you know, Jay, if we've hit capacity at any one of our programs this year?
Construction was
It was,
No,
yeah.
it's still, it may, no, actually, we just added another student, so I think it is.
It's a little bit low, but
capacity.
we're at least at optimum and perhaps a little above that for many of our programs, but being a COVID year, we did not max out like we had last year. So we're hoping to be able to return to that. I'm gonna stop there and ask if there are any questions and how you would like us to proceed.
Dana, this is Kim.
Okay.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Good. My questions are this. You've made a presentation at Mount Abe and at Middlebury. I wonder if you could give us some feedback on how you were received.
I think it went very, very well. Who was at my Mount Abe presentation? Steve, you were there, weren't you?
I was there. Anytime somebody says the budget's going down, it's well received.
So, I mean, Steve, you were at that presentation.
I really like how you waved your magic wand and did that, but no, the presentation was very good. It was very succinct. I think it was very helpful, and it was good to get the information early.
Thank you, Steve. And at ACSD, there was, I think, several more questions that we got, but I think Lorraine and Suzanne were both present at that presentation. So if they'd like to comment, they can certainly chime in first, and then I'll offer my perspective.
The comments and questions from ACSD were, some were directed back at the issues from last year and the budgeting information that was released, and wanting to make sure that that did not continue. So that was one comment. And then I think there was another one again around the 6th semester rolling average. I know prior to Dana's presentation that I had already revisited with them the 6th semester rolling average. Some of the answered some other questions as far as cost of career tech education. And one question that they asked me that they did not ask at the board meeting on Monday night was, why does public education, meaning the K through 12 schooling, have budgetary confines as offered by the state, but why are those not offered up for career tech ed? So that was one question they did not ask. And so Dana didn't get a chance to respond to that one.
Yeah, that's too bad, because I think I could have provided a succinct answer for that. And if you'd like, Suzanne, I can address that now, unless you want to finish going over the
That's what I had been asked. So if you'd like to answer that on MTV, that'd be great.
Okay, I'd be happy to. First, I thought that both presentations have gone very well. People were very thoughtful in their questions and appreciative of the information that we were presenting. With respect to the controls, the interesting thing is that career and technical education falls under the auspices of two agencies. That's the Agency of Education and the Department of Labor. And in terms of the cost containment is placed on school districts as a whole. Generally speaking, the support and funding for career and technical ed helps to mitigate that, and you can't put a number on students participating that doesn't follow guidelines that are outlined by AOE. Excuse me, I correct myself, for the Department of Labor. So you can have a math class that has 20 to 24, maybe even 30 students in a class, and they're not going to run into a violation. If we were to try to have a class that had more than 16 students in an automotive section, we would have to have 2 instructors, or we would have to have an instructor and an aide, because it would be a safety violation. So there are costs in terms of, if you're looking at it student-teacher ratios, those ratios are going to be smaller with CTE because of the number of students that you're limited to put in any particular class. The other thing is that with our with CTE, the total cost for CTE statewide represents about 6% of the taxpayer burden. So we've broken that down, and actually, excuse me, it's not. It's 3%. It's 6 cents on a tax dollar. So it's about 3% of the taxpayer burden. So with respect to CTE serving a dual role, there is not necessarily a perceived need to cap the training opportunities for students, because we want to encourage students to participate in the labor force, and CTE instruction is critical for developing those workplace readiness skills so that people can enter, our students can enter post-graduation the workforce directly, or to work in the workforce while they're pursuing an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And so my understanding is that we are more regulated by AOE anyway in terms of program changes, that there's a direct oversight by AOE that is not present in many of the school districts because they are subject to local control. But that's a little bit of a hypothetical on my part. And the career centers also receive federal funding just like the school districts do. But the amount of federal funding that we receive is a small fraction of what is allocated to the regular school districts. So for example, we don't get Title I funds, and we don't get IDEA funds, and so on. Those go to the regular ed school districts, and those funds are supposed to be used to support all of the students wherever they happen to be going to school. How's that?
Suzanne?
Yes, Lorraine.
One other thing that I mentioned at our meeting, someone did ask Dana, although, you know, he mentioned the lower cost next year. Someone did ask about our costs compared to other centers, and which Dana, I mean, was not able to answer because he doesn't have that information yet, since people are just creating their budgets. But I think there's still quite a bit of concern on our board about the high cost.
I've explained both to the ACSD board and any other board that's that has. Can you read that? I can't read that.
Christina has to leave.
The question about the cost, and there are a couple of factors that contribute to that. One factor is we do run 2 campuses. Here at Main Campus and at North Campus, and there are some additional costs, both in terms of maintenance upkeep as well as supervision that is required. Not significant, but it does add to the cost. 2, we are very closely indexed to other salary schedules in our region, which are higher than several of our counterparts that are part of a regional, what do I want to say, bargaining unit. The third factor is that our FTE count, participation rate, from the partner schools is lower, or has been lower, it's improving, but had previously been lower than the participation rate at many of our counterparts across the state. Facilities, personnel costs, and lower participation rate. That would explain a large component of that. And I did say that I would be happy to provide that information once it becomes available to me. We do have monthly directors meetings, and in December, I'm likely to know that more clearly as to how people are going. What I can say, though, is that when a study was done last year as part of our Act 187, it is relatively cheaper to operate as an independent district, because overall, the total cost of operation, they did a comparison between the 3 independent districts and those that were run as part of another SU, and the costs to operate those were lower overall, based on the information that we received from AOE. That's part of the question about doing a pilot and having the taxpayers vote. Well, they do vote directly on ours, but for that assessment to come directly to the independent career centers rather than being passed through on, or a tuition assessment to the partner schools. So we'll have more information about that once that conversation resumes. And Lorraine, I will try to get that information from our colleagues as soon as I can. I might be able to get it more quickly from the other 2 independent schools than I would from my colleagues who are part of an SU. But I'll be happy to provide that information later in the budget process.
Yeah, that would be
You
useful.
said you sort of looked into this last year, so I'm assuming that there's probably historical comparisons that could be made, even if you don't have this year's data.
Yeah, so Steve, I don't know if you are aware, but the Hannaford Career Center has the dubious distinction of being the highest cost career and technical center in the state.
Based on
average, just comparing the numbers that get presented. That's different than what AOE was doing as an analysis, so I can't explain the difference there. I can just explain.
You're talking about on an FTE basis?
On an FTE basis, yep.
Okay.
Right, purely on an FTE basis. And that is total number, it's budget divided by total number of students.
Yeah, I would think with the different types of programs, the different sizes of the facilities, the different course offerings, and your partnering issues, it'd be really hard to make comparisons.
Right, but I can throw some type of a number out there. There's no honor in being wearing the dubious distinction of the most expensive, no matter how that's calculated. So there is work to be done to bring it closer in line with others. And it wasn't just the most expensive, there was probably a couple $1,000 difference. And so we're working on whatever we can to bring that into alignment. But the biggest thing is the number of FTEs, and we have been working on that for the last 3 years. And that is probably the biggest contributing factor to why that drop has occurred. When I first arrived, I believe we had, and I think I made this presentation to our partner schools that year. That would have been in January or February of 2018. That we had about 40% capacity in many of our programs overall, and that's too high. Most of our partners across the state in CTE, some of them, Stanford runs almost full in many of their programs, and some of our other partners run at 10 to 25% excess capacity. That's a target that we should be shooting for, and that's one of the things I think we had achieved last year. Hence the number of FTEs at 147, very close to a 5 to 7 year average, or average, excuse me, 5 to 7 year high. So that's where we'd like to be, and I think that our work, if it focuses on making sure that capacity can be filled, then we will see a overall FTE cost drop.
Other questions for Dana? Nick, did you say something?
Yes. Data, without getting into the weeds, but you've got I assume, a healthcare cost increase baked into this.
Yes.
3.7 number.
Yes, we do.
So what sort of, without giving away the crown jewels, what sort of percentage increase are you looking at?
50,000.
Okay.
So we've absorbed a $50,000 increase in that number that we put out.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's very good. I'll credit Austin with some of the magic there, but.
So
That's coming from VI and Visbit, Nick. They're projecting just shy of a 10% increase anyway.
Right.
So you took that number.
Yes.
I can't take full credit.
Okay. Well, we'll look for some more magic next month.
I'll try my best.
Are there any other questions?
Could we get a copy of this presentation?
Absolutely. I'll be happy to send it out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, what do you attribute the lion's share of the $75,000 to?
A couple of things have already occurred in terms of some of our staffing, and changes in staffing and possible changes, I think, in benefits that people have opted for have resulted in some significant decreases there. I know, Austin, you and I had talked about this, and I said I was going to write myself a note about the other ones. Is there another area that we looked at that was also favorable towards that reduction? Because I know that we had to bake in the 50,000 that made it go back up. Oh, we've got some program instructors. We've completed the program instructor overview. I don't think they're all included in that amount, but they will be by the time we get to the December board meeting. And I don't know, Austin, is there anything else? Am I forgetting something?
I'll have to check my notes, but the biggest cost driver that we evaluated quickly was the personnel changes this year.
Yeah.
So.
And right.
Go ahead.
Those are based on people that we currently have in and what we're looking at in terms of those projections. So that savings is something that we think is a real number because of the transitions and changes that people have made. It's not been easy for us to manage some of those changes, but the bottom line is that so far it hasn't driven up our costs for next year. It actually contributed to a lower budget.
How did the healthcare does the healthcare negotiation apply to you folks as well? The statewide healthcare negotiation?
Yes, it does.
And how did that compare to how you were operating prior?
It drove our costs up almost 200,000 last year.
Did you have a lot of were the staff responsible for first out of pocket and then that switched on your end?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah.
So we ended up having to put in the budget for that for a higher amount than was originally projected using the Spit and VHI. And that was a significant increase. I think it was about a 50% increase over what we had in budgeting.
Okay, so you've baked that in already.
Well, that's baked into this year's, and we haven't changed it for next year. We've just put a multiplier on that Austin has done. And so that is, we still got to review our numbers, but we think that is already included in that.
Okay.
Preliminary projection.
Oh, so you've maintained that number more or less?
Yes, we did, Nick. We did not make changes on that unless there was some substantive reason to do so. We kept everything status quo and took all of the plans that we had and added an increase of 10%.
Okay, good.
I think it's 9.89, 9.9. I can't remember, Austin. We just decided to do a flat number because.
Yeah, I think VHI quoted 9.96 or 9.99, something like that. It's just shy of 10.
Yeah.
Look, it's just that at Mount Aid, they had to look into their crystal ball to figure out what the impact was going to be on the switch, and it was a recommended from other folks that they aim high with their contingency for that issue. I'm wondering, after a year's worth of data, if you guys have sort of narrowed down what that risk really looked like.
So, Steve, that we won't be able to determine that until June, because we won't have a full year of data assessment on that. So, so going into 2022, we're assuming everything for 2021 plus the 10%.
Okay.
Because we will not have, and this has been the case now twice in my tenure in only 4 years. It happened when we went to the first shared plans, when we went to an 80-20 split in the middle of my first year here. That was the 2018 school year, and it took us 18 months to get 3 semesters to put it together and get an aggregated amount in order to be able to budget. So we budgeted for 1 year, and then we got hit with this, and we had to recalculate those figures. So we won't know until 2023, the 2023 budget, what we are really expecting for a full year under this plan, because it will take from now until December of next year to get really good numbers. Now, we will have a projection, because those last dollars will be employee costs, which right now they're first dollars of employee costs. So once people hit the maximum for deductible, we will be able to say that any additional cost will be theirs. And so we'll know that that's a fairly strong number, but we may not know that until next November.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions for Dana?
Did this meet most of your expectations? If there are other questions that you would like addressed in the next meeting, I'm happy to include those in our conversations, and Austin, Jay, and I will make sure that if there's something specific that you need addressed, fire me an email, and we'll be happy to try to do that in the presentation. It'll be much more in-depth next time.
Dana, do you have a regular facilities construction line item, or is that the BRF fund? Is that?
Well, so we have a department, and that's John Crowley's department. We have one for both North Campus and Main Campus. The total budget in there is somewhere in the $550,000 range for maintenance and facilities. So it's about I'm going to say 15% of our overall budget.
Right.
And then we do have the BRF, but the BRF is generally used for either emergency repairs, such as the water heater that we need to have replaced, that was referenced in the facilities report, and that won't be replaced. That's just money that we will have to either take from our surplus and ask the voters to return to fill out the BRF, or we'd have to build it into an allocation in our budget. But if you need more information about that, you and I can sit down, or I can show you how to find that information.
No, I was just curious whether the map that you were including kind of keeps your head, just above water as far as facilities are concerned, because it looked like there was quite a bit of capital expense in the earlier presentation tonight that hasn't been able to be made headway on over the years.
Yeah.
Now, Abe, I know you know that we couldn't pass the kind of bond that we were hoping we were going to pass to do large improvements. So we started just basically throwing quite a bit of money, $1 million a year in a line item to try to build some headway towards doing projects a little bit at a time.
So to give you a little bit of history, Steve, this is a project. This bond idea was the recommendation of the previous board chair from Otter Creek Engineering, who also sat on the facilities committee, and we were doing some projects based on electrical system upgrades, which had been recommended to John Curler, and when when we were sitting down at the facilities committee meeting, it was suggested that we actually look at a full-blown electrical, mechanical assessment. As we were doing that, it became clear that we needed to expand that because it wasn't just electrical and mechanical, and it was going to have a significant cost. And that's when we ended up contracting with EEI to look at this because of the good reputation they had. So that process started after Jason LaRock left the board, but he was the one who helped us get on the path towards doing this work. And so I'm glad that he did, because I don't think that we were paying close attention prior to my arrival about the aging facilities infrastructure and what really needed to be looked at. And so just to let you know, the impact of what Mike was talking about, so that you can have this in your framework. If we're retiring a $110,000 bond, then the cost at of the $8 million one at $580,000, whatever it would be closer to 470,000, and the other one would be closer to what was a 280, so 110 is 170. We'd be looking at about 1,000 to 1,500 on our FTE count as it currently stands, or maybe a little inflated. And the larger one would be closer to a $4,000 increase on FTE, based on an FTE expense ratio. So those numbers I have figured out in my head just to provide an orientation. So you just take whatever you'd be adding to the budget, assuming that everything else stays the same, and you divide by approximately 130, and that would give you your cost per additional FTE. So $1,000 would be 130,000. 195,000 would be 1,500. So it'll be a little less than that on the lower end project was that version B, I guess. So, but if you need more information about that, we can talk about it later. But that's what the impact would be, unless if nothing else changed within the expense side of the budget.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I'm looking at the list of participants. I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised or anything. So are we good to move on?
Oh, there you are. Good.
Sorry, I could have stopped sharing my screen a while ago, but I wasn't sure if anybody wanted me to go back, and it would have been a pain to have to do that. So
Okay.
Thank you.
We are all set on the preliminary budget information. If anybody has any questions or further pieces, please send them to Dana. Reports to the board. The reports were in your board pack. Does anybody have any questions on any of the reports that were sent out? Nick, do you have a question?
I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I thought David Roberts' numbers for ongoing classes were fantastic. Full.
We were surprised by the phlebotomy response, and I'll give a shout out. We did a lot of we did some advertising on the radio and some paid advertising on Facebook.
Nice.
And I think it's paid off. So yep. Thanks for noticing.
Congratulations.
Suzanne?
Right.
I was wondering about the web design class. How is that going for enrollment?
We are four people in that class confirmed, and we could run it with 6 to 8. This is a new teacher for us. She's an actually alum of Lisa Rader's and recommended. So we're going to run it with 4 and give her a shot with a smaller class. we're excited. This was a request from the business community for us to run this small business association. So we're responding to an immediate need.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, I'd be interested myself if I was, you know, I think it sounds very interesting.
Not gonna sign up for it, Lorraine? Come on now.
Probably not, but I'd like to. I mean, I think it would be very interesting.
Other questions on any reports? I know, your brains are all probably fried right about now.
Well, the assistant director's report was good too, man. The annual calendar of rigorous professional development, that's great. Seem to be getting things done.
Yeah.
I'm muting, I'm nattering.
We have any other comments or questions on the reports?
Nope.
Hearing none, let's move on to other. Is there anything else people would like to discuss that's related to board operation?
I do like the Zoom better than the Google Meet.
You like Zoom better?
Definitely.
Okay. See, who haven't we heard from a lot tonight? Judd, would you like to take policy 4.1 governing style?
Sure, I would. Sorry that I don't have video tonight. We've just moved into our new house and we don't have all of our Wi-Fi working just right. I thought that this meeting went quite well. I know that we're, as usual, a little bit over time, but I feel like we were able to move through things a little more efficiently. I think we're all getting the hang of muting ourselves when we're not being spoken or we're not the one speaking. And I think that helped. And I do believe that Zoom was a nicer platform. So thank you, everybody, for all of that.
Thank you. So, point of question, Dana, since you are now host of this meeting, am
I hosting?
Are you removing all the guests after we do our motion to go into executive session?
I think
I can't just remove guests, I don't believe.
I think Patrice is the host, isn't she?
Yeah.
No, Patrice rolled it over to Dana. Or do you want me, I did set up a Zoom meeting and I can quickly.
I think that's what we had planned.
Okay.
On going to the other link for the executive session.
Suzanne, have you
email? I'm not sure I saw that one.
Okay, I am going to be sending it right now. So if
So I'll ask the question: Is there any need for us to return and take action? Do you think out of executive session?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, Jake says that Jake made a suggestion that everybody can go into a breakout room. I kind of assign people to a breakout room if you would like, and then we can go back to the regular session. Haven't thought about that, but
I think that's what we sort of suggested the last time we were talking about this.
If you want to do that, that's fine. Because since I'm not the host, I can't do that.
yeah, I think I can do that. Let me see what I can do really quickly. Okay, so let's see, board members and just me, or who else do you want in the
Board members and just you.
Okay, Judd, Kim, Lorraine, Mike, Missy, Nick, Sean, Steve, Suzanne. Did I get everybody? Did I miss anybody?
No, you've got
Okay.
everyone because.
So I'm going to,
Make sure you have a motion to go to executive session before you all leave to that breakout room.
Right, so may I have a motion from the board to go into executive session for personnel negotiations per 1 VSA and 313A3?
I would move that. Suzanne, also, Lisa's asking how the public's going to receive notice the regular session's over, that it's been adjourned.
So then,
I will be back in open session, and others can go back into open session. Well, actually, we need to take a vote just to adjourn, right?
so Dana, when we're done executive session, Dana could bring
everybody back.
Guests back out.
Right.
Out of the breakout room, yep.
But I did make the motion to go into executive session for personnel and negotiations.
Second? Mike, you seconded that?
It was me, Sean.
Oh, Sean, sorry. Thank you.
So I'm just setting the breakout room time. Do we need more than 30 minutes?
No.
Okay, great.